now for the last 2 years. For the last 6 years, we've been in the championship, and we've won 4 out of 6. So it's been a pretty good run so far.
I know Gunther because I grew up with him. I know he said he was coaching. He was helping like assistant with the JV ever since he switched his
Yeah,
school.
the JV won this year too.
All right, so that's always good.
Yeah.
He wanted me to help. I went to like one practice just to like scout like that's when I was first starting this project, and I mean I ended up leaving. I mean it was a long practice, as it should be, but I ended up leaving early. But now I'm just calling various coaches, some at 2 or 3 at Iona, and I know the one at Hastings from you know Grasso. You're in Grasso,
Yeah.
So I went to a few of their practices. So I'm just this last round of interviews that I'm doing, where you could kind of like coast off of like the quotes. It's a lot of research. It's like 5,000 words.
Oh wow, yeah.
So yeah, so it used to be 9,000 words, which is really I don't know.
Is this your last assignment?
Yeah, so I should. I mean, it doesn't really matter that much. I should have graduated 2018, but there was 2 semesters where I wasn't in school, not consecutively, but different. So I think I went to Dutchess. I dropped out after like 3 weeks. So, and then there was 1 year semester where I couldn't like afford the tuition. So that's your whole year behind. So I should have graduated 2018. But people keep encouraging me like do it at your own pace and such. So
yeah, I mean, as long as you get it done, there's no time schedule.
Right. So yeah, hopefully I can work for the Journal News. As eventually once the world calms down or the world stops being on fire, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I mean, of course, there's Josh Thompson and stuff we can put you in contact with, and Kevin Devaney. No problem. You guys are talking with them.
All right. Yeah, appreciate that. All right. So I'm just gonna get into it.
Yeah, you let me know what you need.
Yeah. So this is basically comparing ever since we all know the concussion crisis and stuff like that with the NFL, and it's kind of been like a top down approach from, I guess, kind of like Roger Goodell and them partnering with USA Football obviously to try to keep the game safer, and the numbers are declining and such. So just compare football, like the culture of football now versus when you started out.
Yeah, I think when you sit down and you think about high school football, college football, and professional sports, football is always known to have been this extremely rough, extremely physical and violent game, and it is to an extent. But for the most part, we put in different protocols. The states have put in different protocols, the leagues, to protect kids. So the game is so much safer than it's ever been, partly because of the instruction that's given, the way that we're teaching kids how to tackle and how to practice, and limiting the contact on the field during the week. Back in the day, I'm sure, like even before I played, probably in the 70s and 80s and 90s, people were killing each other in practice and being extremely physical. And we don't really do that. It's much more of a teaching kind of instruction. And then the most physical they are is on game day.
And so the practice is kind of the kind of like the crux of what I'm doing outside of the concussion thing, because I still have to talk to a medical professional, which is now it's going to be hard. That's a side note, but so the practices. Well, first off, let's start off with like the heat index, because I know the New York, they actually have like past 95 or something, or past 90. Yep. So what's the rule that you know?
So there's modified practices when the heat reaches different temperatures. We're blessed and lucky enough to have an athletic trainer at every single practice and sporting event every single day. So our athletic trainer makes all those calls. In the past, before we had an athletic trainer, it was up to the head coaches, the athletic director, to make those calls. And it was just really hard because, we'd be on the field coaching. This is like when I was coaching JV a few years before we had the trainer. You'd have to be coaching, but then be mindful of the temperature, especially in August. So now we don't have to think about that. We're on the field, and literally our trainer will come out on the field, he'll blow the whistle, and he'll say everybody inside, because he's monitoring the different temperatures. For example, if the temperature, the real field temperature. It all goes off of the real field temperature, not the actual temperature. So humidity and everything is kind of checked out by the trainer. So if the real field temperature is over a certain type of degrees, then there's no contact, or there's limited contact, or it's helmets only, or it's helmets off. So there's a bunch of rules through New York State guidelines that we have to abide by, and the great thing is it's taken out of our hands. It's all through our personal trainer, our athletic trainer.
All right, so back to I kind of branched off on a different question. So just all right, compare the. So what's your actual like? Just take me through a Monday through Friday. I know Friday, obviously, you guys have the game jerseys on because the game's on Saturday usually. Just take me through. Like, it's kind of hard because it's each day, but like
I can walk you through it.
Yeah. All right, but how you guys would monitor the contact in each practice, specifically with the offensive line as well, with the linemen.
We only do 45 minutes of live contact a week. Everything else is scaled, and based on the different types of work that we do during the week. So, for example, Monday is a lift and a film and a meeting day, where we don't do any contact at all. And then Tuesday, we're on the field for roughly 2.5 hours at max, and we're not doing full contact. Very limited time on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday is very modified, and we scale back. So by the end of the week, those 3 days of contact practices, we're only getting 45 minutes of contact total, full contact. So there'll be like thud per thud. We'll have the defense hold bags, and the offense will run through blocking schemes, or the offense will have different, nothing is full. They're not full contact, and they're kind of going through with just kind of two-hand touch or things like that, just to kind of prepare kids, and we kind of get the through the week healthy, so nobody gets hurt. The other thing in practice, we don't do any to the ground tackling at all. So there's never a complete live period. The way that we've started teaching blocking and tackling is quite different than what maybe you've learned or I've learned when I played. When I was learning how to play football, tackling, it was always like put your head on the football and tackle, right, and get to the ground. So we don't teach that way anymore. We teach a very different way, telling the kids to tackle without their head. So we don't include the head in the contact. So we want to limit the amount of times kids will get their heads involved in contact. So we teach tackling and blocking without that use. For example, in tackling, we teach attacking the near hip or the near pec of the player, of the offensive player, so that our head is on the outside of the body, limiting that contact. So those are kind of the things that we've gone to, we've clinicked over the last years, and it's proven to be really successful. We've had very limited concussion issues throughout the years. Very, very limited. I can't even think of the last 2 years on the varsity level we've had any concussions during practice time. We had one individual got a concussion during our semifinal game this year in the playoffs against Christ the King, and he didn't play in the championship. But other than that, we've been blessed to not have issues like that. And I think a lot of it goes towards how we're teaching and how we're instructing. It's much more of a teaching environment than it is a physical environment.
All right, so I mean, I know you just said over the past few years. So how? So I guess you kind of answered the how. When did your coaching style kind of change? Was it when like these rules kind of came into place, or like a specific year?
So once New York State adjusted the guidelines of physical contact, we adjusted how we do things. And then just really from a common sense standpoint, it's just like Stepinac has 175 kids playing football in the program, probably more than any other program around, and we're really blessed and happy to have that. We want to keep that. So when you start hearing about kids that are getting hurt because of injuries and concussions, and it's only taking away from the safety of the game. We spend a lot of money on the different types of helmets. They're the safest helmets you can get. You know, all our schools around here are spending an obscene amount of money on these really, really safeguarded and tested helmets. So everybody is in the same boat here. We want to see football continue into the next generation, so we have to do things the right way. I don't think there was really a turning point for when we decided to the world changed. You know, we saw from the top down, we saw the fines being had in the NFL and the targeting rules in the college, and then our referees do a great job of keeping the kids safe and eliminating targeting, and then we just teach that way now, so that it just kind of continues, and hopefully that continues into youth sports, which I know I speak to a lot of youth coaches, and they say the same thing, that they're being very, very conscious and very, very safe, because they want to see the sport grow and continue to have a tremendous amount of success. And that's kind of really where it comes from. I can't think of the exact date, a turning point date. You know, I'm sure there was something from New York State. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but we've been, you know, I mean, this is the last 2 years I've been on the varsity level, and then the years before I've only been on the JV, and I can't remember exactly when the switch was made to the way we modify practices. But even certain drills that we did years ago, we don't do anymore. Certain tackling drills, or it's more teaching them how to do it rather than actually doing it.
All right, so with those, I don't, because this is 2011 when I played when I was on the JV, so I can't remember specifically, but I know we had tackling. I remember we had tackling drills. Did you guys ever have like there's the Bull in the Ring, which is like kind of brutal, and there's the Oklahoma. I don't remember which.
We actually don't do those drills at all. They're banned from our practices, so we don't do Bull in the Ring or Oklahoma drills. We don't do any of that.
And so the consensus I'm getting from like my research is like, you know, there's not a helmet that, you know, that actually prevents, like, there's not one helmet like a speed helmet that prevents the concussion and such. So what are the helmets that the school has been ordering?
So we actually order a couple of different helmets. So we have the Schutt speed helmets that we use. The Rebel speed helmets that we use, and then we have the Schutt F7s, which are actually, the Schutts are actually a little bit, if you look online, the Schutts are actually rated a little bit higher than the speeds. But it all comes down to keeping that initial contact from when the head is hit. It's all, you know, the Schutt F7s I actually love. They're a little bit cheaper of a helmet, and they're actually rated higher. And the kids seem to get really good feedback from them. We did test out a helmet last year in practice on the varsity level, the Vices helmets. We didn't purchase them, but the company sent us them to check out. We had 2 kids test them out, and they liked them, but they're very, very expensive. But for us, the Revel Speeds and the Schutts are the ones that we're using. For the most part, the Rydels and the Speeds.
All right, so going back to the practice, I mean, obviously you guys have done a good job of decreasing the injury rate. Well, actually, when I ask this question, it's kind of a practice and a game question. What's the most common injury? Because I've been getting like knee and shoulder, like the answers has usually been the knee and shoulder.
The most common injury that we see is our contusions, which are deep bruises. We had, over the years, we've had some ACL injuries and some LCL injuries, knee injuries, but we've actually seen a shift away from that because of some of the things that we're doing in our strength and conditioning off season, building the muscle, building the area around those areas, so that the kids don't have issues in the summer and the fall. So that's something that we've gone to with our strength and conditioning program. We spend a lot of time stretching and focus on flexibility, but for the most part, we've seen mostly contusions and AC joint sprains of the shoulder, but very, very little. I mean, knock on wood. Last year we only had one concussion at the end of the year, and um, a kid who was just prone to injuries throughout the year. He had a hamstring injury, but that was really it. We were really lucky not to have a tremendous amount of injuries.
So I know the school is trying to build like they're in the process of building like a new like gym facility.
Hmm.
So obviously like the strength and conditioning, obviously it's a big part of the program. You know, you want to going up against St. Anthony's and such, especially early 2010s. They're very huge. So
Right.
what's a good balance between the strength and conditioning and also stretching? Because I got some comments where I got some comments from players where people are big, but they're not as loose as they should be. Sometimes they're so stiff that the muscles,
Yep.
just gets too
And
tight.
yeah, that's one of the biggest issues. We're really lucky that we don't have those issues because we spend a tremendous amount of time stretching. We make kids stretch in a pre-workout, and then kids have to stretch in a post-workout individually or paired, and then they're stretched or go through get massages from our athletic trainer every day. One of the things that you work on as a football player is you work on an explosive lifts, right? You work on your deadlifts and your power cleans and all things like that. And what happens is most of the athletes they end up having really, really tight hips. I don't know if you're hearing that when you're talking to them, but they're having really tight hips. And when you have no hip flexibility, it limits a lot of different things, and it actually can lead to more injury. So we spend a tremendous. I mean, I can't even tell you how much time we spend. The kids do yoga. The kids, and a football program and basketball program do yoga. They have, they're in the whirlpool baths or the ice baths after workouts, or they're getting massages after workouts. Some are doing cryotherapy after workouts. So there's a lot of different things that we're doing creatively to make sure that they continue to stay extremely loose. Because if they're not flexible, then they're never going to get faster. They're only going to be these big, meatheads that can't move.
Yeah, I mean, I like that perspective because because it's this. I mean, this is why it's good to get the interviews done because this was initially brought up to me by Jordan's friend that went to Mount St. Michael where he's at Springfield now. He actually had unfortunately had two injuries, and he said like these guys like they're so stiff and even at the college level like
Yep.
some guys like you're 5 yards apart and you might be on your back and you might be talking about class or such and it's like these guys aren't taking the stretching like seriously.
A lot of places don't take it seriously because it takes up so much time. Think about it. You have a 2.5 hour period of practice. You have to then extend that by 20 minutes in the beginning and 30 minutes in the end. So that's another 50 minutes of added time to a practice for stretching. And I'm crazy with it. I'm all over it on the whole program from freshman JV to varsity because I make sure that they are stretching. And a lot of times as coaches, when I was younger, you say, okay, everybody stretch and then call it a day. And then what do? They go inside, they call it a day. They don't stretch, but they touch their toes for 30 seconds and they say, I stretched. So we don't do that because stretching will just solve a lot of problems, and hopefully, prevent a lot of problems, which we've noticed.
All right, so going back to the even though this isn't like mostly about going back to the concussions
Hmm.
uh question. um how do you think the NFL, because like it's obviously it's a controversy and there's a book about it, there's a movie about it with Will Smith and such. How do you think that they handle it? Because it looked like they kind of dragged their feet for a while.
I really don't know. I think it would be. I can't really speak on how the NFL handled it. Personally, I only could know about how I've handled it myself and as a player and as a coach. But obviously, it's really important because you're seeing that these injuries are having much more long-term effects than short-term effects. So a player can get a concussion and feel fine in a few weeks, but we don't know what the damage has happened to that person's brain 15, 20, 30 years from now. And, uh, you know, we thank God we've got some amazing doctors and scientists that have spent a lot of time studying this. And hopefully, they continue to change and shift the policies so that you know the game can just get that much safer. You know, when you watch the NFL today, you notice that they're calling things differently, even in the NCAA. You know, the targeting rules, and you know, it's definitely changing. I see it in high school sports. You know, referees making some calls to keep kids safe. So I think right now everybody's doing the best they can, and every year it's just going to get better and better.
So for for my assignment, the patient zero is kind of, if you've ever read like the Legal Denial, which is what concussion is based off of.
Yeah.
So, you know, like it's a good book. Patient zero for like the controversy was Mike Webster, you know, Iron Mike
Yep.
from the, you know,
Yep.
Steelers.
Yep.
You know, I don't know. I'm saying it as if you don't know, you know, football, obviously. And you know,
That's all right.
obviously he was a center. So just talk about the importance of just keeping the head out of the game as you know, you coach linemen and such.
Yeah. So the way that we instruct with the offensive linemen is, you know, there used to be this. The way you're teaching offensive linemen to initiate contact was, you know, putting their helmet literally into the man in front of them. And way that we teach offensive linemen now is much more based on hand placement and feet. So it, when these big guys, especially, you know, last year our team, even the year before, our state championship team, everybody was 6'5" and above, 320 pounds. You know, they were all monsters. And you know, these big guys, you notice they don't use their heads. They don't put their heads down and try to bury somebody. It's all about placing their hands, keeping their feet under them, and finishing blocks that way, rather than, you know, putting their heads down, keeping their eyes down, and burying their head into somebody. So we always say you can't hit what you can't see. The offensive linemen are taught that, and that's kind of what we preach. And we notice that in practices, we fix that immediately. All of our practices are filmed by a drone and a end zone camera, so we get some really great angles. And when we watch the practice of each practice during position meetings, every coach gets a chance to kind of evaluate their player and notice that where your head is. So, you'll hear Coach Martinez say it, like, you know, your head's down. Why's your head down? Or, you know, we'll slow motion and show them what they're doing. And then as the weeks progress, you see more and more the kids are conscious of what they're doing with their heads, and that's really important.
I mean, it's funny that you said that because like USA, as I mentioned earlier, with Roger Goodell partnering with them with the NFL, they say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's heads up football. So
Yep.
like one thing I don't know as much about the line because it's obviously not my specialty. So I guess talk about at least a little bit with the, even though it might be similar, the defensive line. I always think of J.J. Watt. His active hands.
Yep.
He's
Yep.
always got, you know, a combo move, and it's not just like pure strength with him. So just talk about the active hands thing for defensive line.
Yeah, so on the defensive line, you know, defensive line and interior linebackers is the same thing because they're in the mush. You know, they're in the middle of that war zone right up front, and you know, our defensive line Coach Johnson and Coach Peller, you know, they teach their guys all about hand placement and extension. So your strength comes from hand placement and then extending. And when they extend, what does that do? It keeps their bodies further away from the offensive lineman, and if they're further away from the offensive lineman, then their head is nowhere near that contact, so they can then make whatever counter move or whatever hand move, to shed that block and then get involved in the tackle, again approaching the tackle using the near hip or the near pec of the player, keeping their head outside of the body. So one thing you'll see our defensive line for 15, 20 minutes a day in pre-practice after they stretch or before they stretch is they work on hand games. So they just literally work on hand placement, how to fight with their hands and get their hands in the right spot so they can shed the block, engage the ball carrier or the quarterback with their head outside of the body, attacking the near hip or the near pec of the player.
I got a similar answer from a coach with he's not the coach anymore, but not important. But he's the coach at Mansfield, and he was talking about like how just keeping the head out of the game helps with like even like the zone blocking scheme. You see like you see Dallas will do it with Ezekiel Elliott, where it's like we know zone is just an area, and you have to. It's like
Right.
that old saying, elephants on parade. You're trying to get to that one spot, and if you're quicker than the defensive lineman, you could kind of cut them off. And it's it's football. I'm going off on a tangent. But football's a complicated game. We both know that. But like
Yeah.
just keeping your head up. It's involved. It's in so many things. And
I don't know if you've had a chance. Maybe you had in your research, but I learned so much, and we've instituted this to our practices in the last 6 years. I learned so much from the Seattle Seahawks. They did a clinic online. You can watch it right online if you Google the Seattle Seahawks hawk roll tackling, and that's how we teach our kids to tackle. So if you go online and check it out, that's exactly what we do to a T. So I've learned it from watching the film online and instituting it into our program. In the last 6 years, that's how we teach the kids to tackle.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because like as I'm speaking to you, I this thing is due on the 20th, but I have like so to break down the assignment just to go off subject a little here.
Mm-hmm.
They had us do like a pitch for journalism. You do a pitch to your editors or whatever,
Yep.
and I mentioned that because I was researching USA football. So I think Seattle Pete Carroll might have partnered up with them as well, like individually. And I watched that video, but I didn't put
Oh,
it.
awesome.
I put it in my pitch, and I made the mistake. I didn't put it in my assignment. So I'm glad you brought that back up. So it's not in the actual thing, and I might. And it's funny because they have the gator roll, and then they have like the hawk roll, which
Yeah, we teach both.
so if you kind of just put both things in, it kind of gives the reader like, hey, this is something that you might want to look at, and this is the hawk roll you might want to look at gator roll. So
Exactly.
I'm glad you brought that up because because I put it in, and then I'm like, and then I keep thinking like Pete Carroll. I'm like, he needs to be in the assignment somewhere, but my emails are all over the place, so I need to just
Yeah, I
need to
love
just
the
find
way
it.
they teach it. So, I mean, they do a really great job instructing coaches how to teach it, and then kids how to do it. And that's what we use the last 6 years.
So you spoke about like the benefit of having a trainer at practice, a trainer on the sideline. So how many trainers do you have for practice, and how many trainers do you have for the game?
So we have the same trainer every single day. Anytime that the football team practices at any level or plays a game on any level, that trainer is on the field with the team. So the advantage is that person, he or she, they get to know our kids. So they stretch our kids individually. They perform, so they give treatment every single day. All of our guys get treatment on a treatment schedule every single day, whether it's a massage, whether it's a stim, whether it's a any kind of taping or individual stretch to the person, to the individual part of the body. So it's a really huge advantage, and we don't have to think about it as coaches anymore. It's like there's an issue, see the trainer. Now, granted, all the coaches are trained in CPR and AED training and first response, but the trainer picks up, basically defers to everything the trainer says. And they're there for everything, for every single sport. We have a team doctor, we have a team orthopedic, and a team doctor, as well as the trainer will bring somebody in if there's multiple, things going on. There'll be another one, but we have a lead trainer with us all year round, and he's amazing. Our guy's amazing.
So is there I know different schools have it. Public schools might have it different. Is there an ambulance in like the far like end zone?
No, we
That's
don't. We,
available.
we
All right,
only call an ambulance if needed.
all right,
God forbid.
all right. Because I'm getting different answers with the ambulance thing.
I think it has to do with public school, and if you're playing at a county, like where the whole kind of world goes to that game. If you go to Texas, if you go to these states where you have 20, 30,000 people on hand, there may be specific rules. But for us, no, we only call them if we need them.
All right. So because like that was an interesting question I had. Where like I mean, they're obviously different. The Yonkers public schools, they had it where the high school they didn't have a trainer, but they had an ambulance on the sideline. So yeah, it's different rules, and your
Yeah,
answer makes sense.
I don't think Yonkers has a full time athletic trainer.
Right.
But all the private schools do. Like Iona, and I'm sure Grasso has one at Hastings.
All right, so this is a more general question because like for purchase they make us subscribe to the New York Times, and so that's
Sure.
where the bulk of my concussion research has been, because obviously they're big papers, so they would be like first to get those stories, and I think Alan Schwartz is their main author on it. So what, and they did one in 2018 about like the declining numbers. What do you think besides like the current rules, like what do you think can be I don't know if it's a public statement, but what do you think can be done about the declining numbers, because it seems to be like
Declining numbers in.
I'm sorry, participation for varsity football, because it's kind of steep.
I have to be honest. We're really lucky where we're not seeing declining numbers in our school, but it's a little bit different because you know how it is. Stepping out, you were there for a while, right? So
Right.
it's a niche school that's kind of obviously private, but we have 175 kids playing football. So we don't see a decline. However, all the public schools in Section 1, they're struggling to have a team. They've got 40 guys in the entire program, but they've got 15 guys on varsity. I mean, that's crazy. So I think it all comes down to public perception and, other programs going out there and getting in the forefront and letting the facts and the research talk more than public opinion, because the game is safer than it's ever been. I mean, it's just I can't disagree. I disagree with people all the time when they say that football is not safe, but the game is safer than it's ever been, and the facts kind of are there to prove that. The science proves that, based on all the different protocols and the different equipment that's used, and the amount of time that kids are able to practice and be in full contact. So, you can get a concussion playing soccer. You can get a concussion playing any sport. So it's really, it's important that people that are doing this research also talk about some of the amazing pros that come from playing organized sports, rather than just the fact that there's a fear of a concussion. But I think public schools are dealing with that a lot. Football is a really expensive sport, and a lot of public institutions can't afford the insurance or the different things that go with the equipment. So it's a budgetary thing. Thank God we're blessed to not have those issues, but it is a real conversation happening around the country.
All right, so this would be the one of the last two questions I have. I don't know, knock on wood that you've never had one. If you've ever had a concussion, or you had a close like friend that had a concussion, and what their like recovery time was like.
I mean, concussion time, once that there's symptoms of a concussion, once the player has any kind of disorientation, or sees stars, or has a headache, or feel like they're going to throw up, or loses consciousness, I mean, you're on an automatic concussion protocol. You have to see the doctor, you have to then get cleared, and then you have a 7-day protocol to get back onto the field after that. But if a kid has a concussion, they're not on the field for weeks. You don't have a concussion on a Saturday and then you're playing the next Saturday. It's impossible. And that's why we have a trainer that does that. So they go through the various concussion protocols. They have to see a doctor, get cleared by the doctor, and then they go into the protocol. Which is then like, they'll have to do some kind of light jogging or walking, and then they're on the bike, and then they're doing some kind of a drill. So there's a lot of hoops that a player has to go through after
All right, so this would be the last question, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. So sorry if it's a little bit repetitive.
Yeah,
what would be your pitch to a concerned parent, just about even getting into contact sports in general?
I would say any sport comes with a precaution. any sport that a child decides they want to be involved with, there's always the chance that that individual could get hurt. And the worst thing to do is to be afraid to try to be a part of a team or part of a sport because of what you've heard in the news or what you've read in the paper. After you go through the facts and the science behind the safety of the game, there always are going to be risks. But one of the biggest things is if a player is ever afraid, I don't know if you've ever, DJ, you've been hurt, and then you get yourself back on the field. If you're back on the field and you're afraid, you're wondering when you're going to get hurt, odds are you're going to get hurt. So it all comes down to being in the right system, learning how to play the game effectively and safely, and limiting the risk. But, there's going to be risk in anything. There's risk walking down the street. There's, if a kid wants to do something and wants to play a sport, specifically football can teach them much more than anything else. Much more than any other sport, in my opinion. It's an amazing sport that teaches life lessons. You have to kind of let the facts be the thing that drives the discussion. So being safe, having the right equipment, being taught by the right people, all those factors develop the safety that I believe shows or proves that the game is safer than it's ever been in our lifetime. And it only will continue to get safer based on research and based on what you're doing and based on what these doctors and scientists are talking about, especially now what they're talking about, not having youth sports and contact youth sport. I think those things are really dangerous. I think people should really talk about what's been done by the leaders in sports to make the game safe.
Like, I'm getting from coaches the same. I'm getting from coaches like the same kind of the same kind of answer, because we obviously, most people that are heavily invested into the sport, I believe it's the best sport. That football teaches you life lessons. It's not the same as basketball and baseball, which a lot of those sports are like they're team sports, but they're not as much. They're individually based. You're baseball, you're by yourself at the plate. Basketball, you could have two good players and win a state championship. So, and plus it's only 5 people in the court at one time. So, I guess like the camaraderie, the team aspect of it, is it's so important. That's kind of why it was football, baseball for me growing up, and then once I actually got good at football, which is till age 11 maybe, which that's when it kind of that's when the interest kind of took off, and now I'm at this point where I'm researching it, and I even helped coach Iona's JV, no, not JV, the lower school for the 2017 season. So I was an assistant coach. And
nice.
So that was fun. But now I've kind of gone full, because we all know how hard, how the research that goes into coaching. I've kind of gone full into the journalism stuff and just watching it, NFL matchups.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I'm getting the same kind of I'm getting the same kind of consensus with coaches and such. So it's kind of
I mean, it's just people are a lot of people don't want football to be around. A lot of people think it's dangerous. They think it's unnecessary. They think that football creates a culture that a lot of people don't like to be around. And I as a coach and as someone who's played it, I just can't disagree with that enough. I think it saves people's lives, and it teaches so much more. And people just look at oh my God, there was a concussion, so we have to stop this. I mean, there's things that happen outside every single day. We can't stop that because of some of the negatives that go along with it. It's all about safety. It's all about doing the right thing and learning from the professionals, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I think people can take it to its. People can take every bad situation kind of to its own extreme. I guess if that's the case, that would be the most common thing, and that I hear while I'm following political stuff is people want to ban certain things. They were but would you ban alcohol because some people drive drunk?
Right.
Exactly. That's kind of my analysis, and then that's when I get this is a good perspective. This is something I hadn't thought about, and that's kind of the benefit to what I'm doing these interviews is like, you know, you're obviously, you want to inform people as a journalist, but you're learning stuff yourself, and it's kind of nice to get the coaches' perspective as well as the players.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, this thing is due like early May. Once I have it like full, hopefully I get an A. Once I have it fully
sure you will.
fully edited, I'll get it back to you. And I just want to thank you for. I know it was a rough transition. That was like what 10 years ago at Stepanek, but you know, you obviously. I had some issues like with interpersonal with some of the students, but you always treated me well, so I appreciate that. And I saw you sent me a message. I'm sorry I never got back to you, but
Yeah, no, it's
but
okay.
yeah,
I was just you know,
yeah.
you have a great future ahead of you. Obviously, you're doing this thing, and that's awesome. I'm happy for you. And whatever I could do to help, you know, I'm always here. So you have my number now, and if you need anything followed up on, just give me a text or give me a call.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just thank you again. And once I have this fully back, this is gonna be like 5,000 words. So I'll probably send you like an email or like a PDF to the final version of this.
My email is easy. It's just jvenice@stepanek.org.
All right. Yes. All right. So you know, I'll get back to you in a month, and hopefully the world stops burning by then. But which
I don't know, man.
Which
I don't think so.
I doubt it. But yeah, appreciate you getting back to me, and it should be fun writing up your your section of the article.
Sure, man, definitely. Yeah, that was my major in college. Actually, I was a sports journalism double major, so it was communications and English. So I love what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. I forgot a lot of the coaches teach. So as you said that, I was like, oh, like actually, I was a student of yours. I didn't even realize it. Like, and usually my memory is good, which is like crazy. But you know, that's obviously 10 years.
That was a while ago.
So yeah. Just hopefully you can kind of like make the most of whatever time you have while we're all in isolation and just.
Yeah, you too, man. Definitely same here, and stay safe and tell your family I said hello. And try to get some fresh air if you can, staying 6 feet away from everybody.
Yeah, I'm taking no risks, but for the final time, I appreciate it, and I'll definitely get back to you.
All right, bud. Thanks.
All right, have a good one.
You too.